Hello there. What's going on, everybody? Today, I'm bringing to you a patron-suggested video, and it's top mistakes that new players make in Star Wars Armada. Well, rather new and experienced players alike, because, well, I've been playing the game since it launched, and I still make mistakes. It's certainly not something that I'm immune to, and I figured I would bring to you guys a list of what I think are some of the most common mistakes that players will make. So this is not going to be a comprehensive list of every mistake, but this is going to feature some of my highlights for things that I think you should watch out for. But if you do like what you see here, be sure to click that subscribe button. There's also a new round of the giveaway going on right now. You can enter to win a $25 Amazon gift card. You just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment in this or one of my videos. It's as simple as that. So let's go ahead and talk about some common rules mistakes in Star Wars Armada. Well, not just rules, but also rules and strategy. There's going to be a little bit of rule mistakes that some people get wrong, and also just some general basic strategy that players will get wrong. And I think one of the first ones I want to talk about is deploying. Deploying squadrons specifically. So the rules state that your first deployment must be a ship, but after that you can, instead of deploying a ship, you can deploy 2 squadrons. So usually you want to have even numbers of squadrons in your builds, and sometimes people will bring like 3, and I'm like, well, wouldn't 4 have been better? Because then you could have done 2 squadrons. But a lot of times, especially with new players, people will wait until they've deployed all of their ships, and then they will begin to deploy squadrons. Now this is a sure sign of a new player, or maybe in some rare cases a very experienced player just trying to bluff. But basically, you generally want to save your more expensive, your more delicate, your more linchpin ships until the end, because your opponent will be able to see where your strategy is going to be when you're deploying all of your ships right away. And if you use your squadrons to stall, you kind of give yourself like, hey, if all my ships or all my enemy squadrons or all my enemy ships are over on this side, I can now put my most delicate ship all the way over here, and then come at them maybe from a side angle, try to flank people and things like that. And that's a big part of the strategy for Armada. So much, in fact, really boils down to the beginning and that deployment step. Some games are won and lost at deployment alone. So using squadron deployment, 2 squadrons in place of a ship when it's your turn to deploy, is a crucial stalling mechanism, because let's face it, squadrons can move a lot more freely than ships can. So even if you have some 2 TIE fighters out of position, you can easily just jump them back with the fleet. Of course, they do have to be deployed within range of a ship, but I'm not going to go into all of the rules about that. You can read that in the rule book, but a lot of people just simply forget to do that, or if they're not used to playing squadrons, forget that that's even an option. So that's the number 1 on this list. Another thing is activating ships too early when you don't even have to. And what I mean by that is when it's your turn to activate, sometimes people will have a big ship like a Super Star Destroyer, and they don't realize that they can just flip that token and stall and pass back to the other player. And so they'll maybe go, or perhaps you're running Strategic Advisor, and it's turn 1, and maybe you want to stall a little bit to see where your opponent's going to move, and that gives you a better, way of where to point your ships. The timing of when you activate ships is crucial. But another aspect of it, so it's, like one aspect of timing of activating ships is in, using those upgrades and those abilities that those ships have, but it's also in when you activate the ships, when you actually need to activate a ship. One example is, let's say, this Super Star Destroyer hasn't gone yet, and I've got some flotillas or something that I could go ahead and do. I probably want to save, I probably don't want to move into range before I have to. I usually want to wait for somebody to come into my range before I go into their range. This way I can take advantage of them moving closer to me, shoot, and then maybe, I'm first player, then be able to last and then first and things like that. But I've just seen, if I know that I can shoot this ship, but I know I have to move afterwards, and that movement is going to put me in danger, I usually want to wait for a ship like that to go last, so this way maybe the danger will have already activated. And so there's really 3 times, and this one's it's hard to describe every use case on when, hey, you probably want to stall, but I think the easiest 2 examples are when you have something like a huge ship that can just pass, or an upgrade like Strategic Advisor, which also allows you to pass. Speaking of upgrades, when you're running too many different upgrades, if you've got if you're running maybe a really big battle, it's very common to forget upgrades. But even if you're just newer and you're running a lot of stuff that you're not really accustomed to, simply forgetting your upgrades is something that new players and experienced players like myself, I do this all the time. This is probably the number one thing that I will do, and it's usually when I'm trying out new things. It's usually when I'm trying out a lot of new things. This happened to me quite a bit when the Superstar Destroyer came out, because there were so many new upgrades, and of course a ship that could take so many things. There were times where I wasn't even using all of the stuff that I had available because I was just simply forgetting. So that's something that definitely happens. And my advice in this case is try not to run too many upgrades. And, it's kind of a separate mistake, but it really goes into this one. And it's building ships with all of their upgrades on them. Usually, especially if you're new to the game, you don't need to use every single upgrade that is on a ship. You're going to get yourself maybe a nice new Imperial Star Destroyer, and it's going to have all these upgrade slots. You don't need to fill them all. No, you don't. Try, you know what, first game, maybe just put one. Maybe just try a single upgrade. Get used to that, after that, maybe put two, or maybe a third one, but I wouldn't add more than two at a time, because there's going to be so many things you're already needing to learn about how this ship flies, about how fast it is, it's actually surprisingly fast for a ship of its size, how you want to be able to maneuver it to try to keep that front arc pointed on target. There's a whole lot of thought that goes into pointing, to keeping your enemy in the front arc of a Star Destroyer, for example. It doesn't have to be a Star Destroyer. Maybe you're looking at an MC-30. There's a whole lot of practice that goes into like any black dice or close range ship trying to stay alive while also being able to put targets at black dice range, and timing that right so that you're not moving in too early and you're moving in late enough, that you can manage to get the black dice on a ship. Or maybe you're flying a faster, more fragile ship like a CR-90, and you want to be able to try to flank people. So there's a whole lot of that just goes into flying the ships on their own that you need to learn if you're new. That putting way too many upgrades on your ships is going to give you a lot of things that you're going to forget, and a lot of points wasted that probably could have gone for a whole nother ship. So too many upgrades, you're probably going to forget them. There's so many built-in mechanics that we're going to forget that don't even boil down to upgrades. Squadrons, for example. Squadrons. How many squadrons have counter that you forget? Like, how many times have you attacked an A-Wing and your opponent forgot to counter? Or attacked the TIE Interceptors, your opponent forgot to counter? Or using your squadron, using Swarm, using your rerolls, or just using those built-in abilities that aren't even on upgrades that people will forget all the time. And the same thing now with Salvo being a defense token for the newer ships. If you got any of the Wave 8 expansions, you've probably seen Salvo. Newer players are going to forget that they have an option that they can counterattack with. And another new thing, you need to watch out for Salvo. Even if you're not running a Wave 8 ship, if your opponent is running Wave 8 stuff or has some of the new Wave 8 upgrades that give them Salvo, that means now if you attack them, they may be able to kill you in return with a Salvo attack. So that is something new that a lot of people are, right now you're probably not playing a whole lot unless you're playing online, but that's something you need to remember, is Salvo. Speaking of squadrons, since I got squadrons pulled up, squadrons can overlap obstacles. And when squadrons overlap obstacles, a number of really cool things happen. So first off, let's talk about the station. And now I'm going to talk about in normal circumstances because there are objectives that specifically talk about when squadrons will overlap obstacles and certain different things, certain rules change. But normally, let's talk about the station. When a squadron overlaps the station, it actually heals one. A lot of people can easily forget that, and that's an important thing. So squadrons overlapping the station is a cool thing. That's really good if you've got maybe a scatter ace or something like that manages to take a little bit of damage, but you don't want them, like especially for ships with very few hull. It's a great way to heal them back up. But another thing is when squadrons overlap any obstacle, if it's not the station, if it's something else, they don't have to worry about taking damage, which is nice. There are some changes to this with the new campaigns that the way Exogorths and stuff can attack squadrons, but those are in the rules for those respective campaign expansions. But another thing is when a squadron fully overlaps like an asteroid or basically any obstacle, that means it's going to be obstructed to and from. All right, every shot that it makes is going to be obstructed. Every shot that somebody makes to it is going to be obstructed. Even if two squadrons touch, the bases aren't perfectly straight. They're actually kind of like a little bit, well, you can see right over here. The bases kind of come out a little bit. And since we draw our line of sight cardboard to cardboard, and we do range cardboard to cardboard, there exists about 1 millimeter of plastic where you would see that obstacle below. So even if two squadrons are touching, and that point of touching is over an obstacle, it's still going to be obstructed. But that can be a very good defensive thing to do, because hey, if somebody's hiding on an obstacle, well, even if you go to try to touch them, it's still going to be an obstructed shot, which is a great way to defend. If you've got a single TIE fighter that's hoping to survive, or maybe trying to hide there until it can jump out and jump in the middle of a whole bunch of B-wings just to disrupt your well-laid plans. So that's certainly something you can think about. Also, since there's no yellow dots, when you measure range for yellow dots with squadrons, you're actually going from that center pole to a yellow dot. If you're doing that, it's not just from any point. You can't just take a shot from the far edge of your ring. So yeah, a lot of stuff with squadrons that people will sometimes forget. I want to talk about concentrate fire, or basically any of your commands, but specifically concentrate fire. So the way commands work is you only get to do one command of any particular type. You can do up to 4 commands. You can, during a ship's activation, right, you can perform engineering, you can perform a squadron command, you can perform navigation, you can perform concentrate fire. But you can't perform the same one multiple times, right? You have a single there's a window of timing for all of them. Engineering and squadrons happen kind of at the beginning. Those happen before you shoot and or move. Some people will get the timing mixed up on those. Sometimes people will try to shoot and move, and then they're oh well, let me before I move, let me do the squadrons. I'm no, you already shot, so of course, friendly game, I'll let you rewind or whatever. But the way the timing works is that's there's a certain order to that, because I didn't do any damage. I had better spend my engineering points on my front shield since he can shoot me back now. So this is you gain certain game knowledge if you do things out of order. So that's kind of why the things are there for a specific order. But one of the things with concentrate fire in particular that I used to get wrong for the longest time is that you only have one opportunity to do concentrate fire. When you do the command, you have to say if you're using your dial or your token or both, and you have to do it before you get results of that command. You have to declare what you're going to do first and then do it. Now, here's the use case and how I used to do it wrong and what is the correct way. I used to say, all right, I'm going to shoot. I've got a concentrate fire dial. Maybe let's assume I also have a token from maybe a previous turn. Well, I don't have to say if I'm going to concentrate fire before I make my attack. That's the cool thing about concentrate fire. Anything that adds stuff to your attack pool, well, you got to make the attack pool first. The attack pool is your dice after you've thrown them, which is really cool. So I got 3 red. I'm attacking you. Boom, boom, boom. I throw it. Oh, I've got I got 3 hits. I don't need to spend my concentrate fire on this attack. Maybe I'll wait for my second attack, my side arc. So I get a little bit of knowledge before I want to make concentrate fire. That much is fine. At this point, let's just say I had 1 hit and 2 blanks. Okay. Let's say, all right, in this case, I do actually want to concentrate fire. So I might add a die. I'll spend my dial, add the die. And oh, you know what? It was bad. At this point, I can't spend my token to re-roll, because when I was doing concentrate fire, I said I was spending the dial. Right? So I used to do that wrong, and then I could maybe spend the token on the next one, or decide I wanted to add a die. And let's say I had 3 hits, and I said I wanted to concentrate fire and added 1 extra die. It turned up blank. Now I want to go back and spend the token. Can't do it. You had to say you were going to spend the token first. Now the token you don't have to re-roll a die. The token's gone whether or not. So if you got 3 red dice, you want to concentrate fire, you can add it. If you've got a dial and a token, you want to say, all right, I'm going to do 1 or both or none, right? So what you would probably want to do to get the best chance of success is say you're going to do both. maybe you roll the die, maybe it turns out a double, then you opt to re-roll 0 dice with the token, you're done. But you could also re-roll a die if you had said you were going to spend the token first. So basically, you can't you can't mix it up, because then you're doing 2 different concentrate fire commands at different times during your turn, and that's one thing I used to get wrong quite a bit. Another little thing about commands and timing is that when you're on the determine course part of your activation, usually if you're doing a nav command or whatever, that's the only time you can actually use that maneuver tool. So this isn't really related to commands as much, but a lot of people like to measure with the range ruler all the time. But yeah, like, you're not supposed to use the maneuver tool to check ranges. You're not supposed to put that maneuver tool out unless it's your determine course step. So the biggest time people do this usually is, I revealed a nav command. Oh, do I want to keep the command, or do I want to cash it in for a token? And then people will pull out that maneuver tool. It's like, well, I might need the extra yaw. That's not the time to do that. So you're not really supposed to do that. Okay, definitely don't do that in a tournament. But again, friendly game, especially if you're learning, I would let you do it during a casual game for you to learn, to see like when you'd want to do that. But when you're playing, a serious game, that's not the time for you to pull out the tool. All right, and let's talk about criticals. Criticals is another thing that that a lot of people kind of get wrong. There is a certain timing to critical effects. Every ship has the default critical effect, and squadrons with bomber have the default critical effect of the crit effect means the first face up, the first damage card dealt will be face up. And that's just default. So any special critical effects are going to replace that one. They're going to replace it. But a lot of people get the critical timing wrong. So one particular card that really kind of drives this point home is Overload Pulse. Overload Pulse is that ion cannon upgrade. It's got the blue critical. It says blue crit, exhaust all of the defender's defense tokens. And people would think, I'll just come at you with a CR90B. People used to do this at the beginning of the game all the time. Let me fly at you with a CR90B. I'll roll that blue crit. It'll exhaust all your tokens, and you can't defend against it unless you want to lose the... Well, hold on. There is timing, okay? So, and the timing is important, because basically, when you're attacking, there's a declare target, there's a roll attack dice step, there's resolve attack effects, there's spend defense token, and then there's resolve damage, okay? People have an option to spend defense tokens before the resolve damage step. And this is very, very important, because you can brace before something like Overload Pulse happens. You can spend all the defense tokens you want before the critical effect happens. Now, the real key here is you don't know what type of effect I'm going to do. Now, if you've got Contain, which is a defense token that cancels the default crit, this is when you really have to make a choice. Maybe I'm attacking your Star Destroyer, and I've got Overload Pulse, and maybe I've got like 6 damage or something like that, and you got to think, boy, do I want to Contain and stop the regular crit? You generally do, because I'm going to Overload Pulse anyway, right? Or that Contain token is going to be gone anyway. But basically, the point is, you don't know what crit I'm going to go with, because I can always opt to go with the default crit. So there are some use cases where you're like, I don't know if I want to stop the default crit, or you don't know which one I'm going to go with, and depending on which tokens you spend, I might opt to go one way or the other. There are some key times where you will forego one of your special crits because you need that face-up damage, especially if you're running somebody like Dodonna. But usually with Dodonna, you'll run crit effects that are more appropriate for him. But this comes into effect a little bit more when it comes to critical effects that deal damage, because you're counting up all the damage from a crit. When there's a critical effect that applies extra damage, that happens before the regular damage from your attack actually goes through. So if somebody was going to redirect one damage to their right hand side, and then I have heavy ion that basically drain all the shields, well, now they have less shields that they can redirect to, so some of that damage may end up going to their hull. So criticals are really interesting. It's all in the new rules reference, too. I would definitely suggest you read that, and there's a whole write-up on page 2 of the RRG under attack. And they did actually update the Armada rules reference guide, so if you go to Fantasy Flight, you can check that out. The only other stuff is that really jumps to mind for me. We talked about Salvo a little bit. That is a defense token, and so, but that attack happens after the entire attack is done. So if you do get a crit that says on me that says I can't attack at long range, but I already spent my salvo to attack back at you, but it's a long range attack, then all of a sudden that stops my ability to salvo. So things like that do happen. But even if you're destroyed and you spent salvo, you still do get to fire back, which is important. And the only other things that was kind of new for Wave 8 that I think a lot of people have questions about is the Onager's ignition, the firing arc, and how that works. I'm going to put a link, because I did a whole video talking about that, and I don't want to reinvent the wheel too much, but I want to put a whole link right at the end up over here so that you can check that out and watch all about the Onager's ignition attack. Basically, it's this, it measures from its targeting token, and you can make really, really long range attacks, but your first attack must be from that ignition arc if possible. And that's I think one of the more important aspects of that is that you must do the ignition attack first. So if you had 2 guys that you could potentially kill in each of your side arcs from an Onager, you're like, well, if you have a targeting token down, you're going to have to go for that front shot first, or that ignition shot first. Yeah, but yeah, definitely check out. I'll put videos over here on the side. And that's about it, guys. I'd love to hear what you guys think. If maybe I didn't cover anything, if you have any more questions, leave them in the comments section, and I'll do my best. And and the community answers a lot of them as well. There's also a lot of resources if you are a new player. You can go to Crabbok.com. I've got a lot more videos over there. You can check out my Discord. I have links to all of that in the description below. There's also lots of ways to support the channel if you like what you see here and you do want to help out in supporting the channel. There are links for Patreon, as well as merch and all kinds of other stuff in the description, so be sure to check all that out. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Big thanks to the patrons. You guys are amazing, and keep those video suggestions coming in. I will talk to you guys later. I want to thank you so much, and as always, have a great day.